we have another big match in Canadian soccer land, and that is, of course, the Copa America qualifier, just a few short weeks away. I could say a couple short weeks away at this point. And today, just about an hour before we began the broadcast, began the taping, the roster was unveiled. It is a juicy one, and I'm told that our social and digital team have put together an epic unveiling announcement. So growling bears, monster trucks, beavers, and
just to get ready. There was all kinds of wildlife in there.
Olivero. The hat made it back from Los Angeles. There are no words to describe.
He's going on a bear hunt.
So with that epic hype video, gentlemen, we notice a few exciting inclusions and some Ollie, put the hat back on. Some few notable
I got serious takes to give there. I gotta be taken seriously.
This is a serious take. This is a serious take. One of the things in the press release, other than the fact it was highlighted, this is the youngest team since 2019, and 22 of the 23 players are under the age of 30. There was a note from Mauro Biello, who went very bold, Gareth Wheeler, in this roster selection, that is an opportunity to change the culture of the program. I'm paraphrasing, though. I can grab the direct quote if necessary. Obviously, no Milan Borjan, no Steven Vittoria, amongst others, is a pretty notable difference for this team. So do you agree, Garrett, that this is a new step, a new direction for the program?
As the oldest individual in this group assembled here, I say thank you, Adam, because if it was Mauro Biello, I probably wouldn't have a say in this equation.
I respect my elders. You go first.
I think it's a squad that will appeal to Canadian men's national team fans. The fact that there is a little bit of a transition away from that group that did so well to qualify for Qatar to maybe a younger group with a little bit of a different profile player. I think that the biggest surprise that we all had, well, it's twofold there. It wasn't surprised that maybe players like Hoylett, who hasn't been playing regular football over recent months, or maybe even Lucas Cavallini, who's kind of been on the outside looking in, a couple of those peripheral players that haven't been preferred in recent windows. I don't think that's the big surprise. It's two players specifically. It's Milan Borjan and Steven Vittoria. Borjan, as recent as last window, was wearing the captain's armband for Mauro Biello. And at that time, he was preaching a little bit more of continuity in terms of the team, that you couldn't just expect change all to come at once. And the fact that that kind of change, significant change, is coming ahead of this game, it just tells you the direction that Biello wants to take this team. And it's away from those players. And obviously Borjan was, received criticism, and rightfully so, the way that the second match against Jamaica was handled. He's part of the leadership group, and perhaps there's more than what we actually saw just on the field that's happening in terms of transition off the field as well. And I think the case can be made in Crepeau, Sinclair, and Sirois being called into the national team for the first time, that you have three really informed goalkeepers with much brighter futures, especially over the short term or longer term, quite frankly. And Steven Vittoria at center back was the other one, because he has been the most reliable right center back option for this Canadian men's national team. And there's no one that stepped in that's looked like they can replace what he brings to the table. My suspicion, recording this before Biello speaks, that in a game against Trinidad and Tobago, where Canada will be the favorites in this game, they want to be on the front foot. They're going to want to press. They're going to want to be able to dictate proceedings, and perhaps a little bit more of an athletic profile at that right center back position is what's required to play this kind of game. It might be different horses for different courses. And one of those players is going to be Bombito, who's been very good for Colorado Rapids out of the gate this season. Although for Canada, he played center midfield and not center back when he was first called up, or Joel Waterman, who's been a staple in a back three for CF Montreal. The one thing I don't think he can go back to is playing Cornelius and Kamal Miller, two players that are left-sided center backs together for this upcoming game. Other than that, some injury issues to deal with. Lorraine and Atakubi are most certainly big losses. They look very thin at fullback. What does that mean for the role that's going to be asked of Alphonso Davies to play? So although I think there's encouraging signs, a lot more athletic, a lot more pace in this Canadian team, it's not without question marks and some potential holes as well heading into this all-important tie.
Oliver Platt, as I come to you next to make sure that I get the direct quote from our own Gareth Strite, we haven't heard him speak yet about the roster unveil. He said, "The squad is filled with young, in-form talent," adding, "That doesn't sound very subtle to me. This is a chance for guys to come in with a fresh attitude to form a new culture." Your thoughts on a big shakeup for Mauro Biello?
Yeah, big comments, I think. Big implications of what he said there just in that release. And obviously we'll hear what he has to say later. But for me, this is a big gamble. There's no question, particularly with Victoria for the reasons we'll touched upon there. But I think it's a gamble that probably needed to happen at some point sooner or later. I think we were always going to need to see transition in this team and a turnover to a younger group. And there is rarely a good or convenient time to do it, right? You can always find reasons, whether it's the opponent, whether it's the importance of the game, whether you just want to have some experience around the young players that are already in the squads. You can always make excuses or have reasons why you don't want to go through that kind of transition and that kind of turnover. And I think, you can't wait for that perfect moment. It has to be a choice that you make because you think it's the right thing to do in the longer term at some point. So Mauro Biello has made that choice. I do think that there is risk attached to it, particularly at the centre back position, but it's done and it's made, and it's going to be really interesting to see how it unfolds. For me, the big kind of implications of this and what I'm really interested to see is not just about bringing in fresh blood into the group. I think that's important, and there's some interesting players who will get opportunities here. But for me, it's just as much, if not more, about the fact that this team is now really being handed over to Alphonso Davies, to Tejan Buchanan, to Jonathan Davids, Larry Eustachio, Johnson, Kamal Miller. These guys are not just going to be the leaders on the pitch now, they're going to have to be the leaders off it as well. And I'm not sure that that's always been the case in Canada over the past few years. When you've had Milan Boyan, Stephen Vittoria, Daniil Henry, Atiba Hutchinson, Junior Hoylett, guys like that on the roster. So this is a big challenge, I think, for those players to lead. It's a big responsibility and a big opportunity as well. And I hope they're ready for it. I think they are. I believe in those guys as individuals as well as football players. But it's a lot of responsibility, I think, for them to take on in a different kind of role for the big star names in this Canada squad.
And Jordan, with this program, with One Nation, with Matchday Live, I feel like this type of conversation has been had by us multiple times. And I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but I think one of the things you had put your finger up and said, let's be mindful of, is the fact that this is a huge game. It's a huge opportunity. And going to Ollie's point, there's never a perfect time to do this. If you're Mauro Biello, or maybe if you're not Mauro Biello, do you think this was the right time to go young and fresh and bold ahead of a one-match play-in match?
It's gutsy, but I think to Ollie's point, and I totally agree, it's just when is the right time. All games are important because Canada has now put themselves in a position where they want to win or go on and play in big tournaments. So you kind of need everyone. Even Gold Cup, when they were playing, it's like, yeah, maybe they played a weaker side or getting guys minutes, but then by the second game, third game, people are like, okay, well, maybe we want to go and win this tournament. So I think everything's important. I think for Mauro Biello being the number 2 for a while under John Herdman, he had the privilege, because that is such an important job. The head coach, as much as you want to be the rah-rah guy, you're the one to make the tough decisions. But the number 2, you're the guy that has that person, or the person that has that personal relationship with players. You're supposed to see the number 1's blind spot, but be able to be like, hey, this guy needs to be picked up. I want to trust this guy. Mauro Biello has had that privilege. So I think, again, I'm speculating, but I think you're going into this game saying, I am going to trust the guys, this new wave that will go and get the job done. And maybe this is the new beginning of things. Would I change it? I've said on this show, and I've said to Wheels many times when we talk privately, is that an interim manager, your job is just not to fumble. It's not so much to be progressive and make changes. But I think also Mauro Biello, after the second leg at BMO Field, maybe just had enough. He said, you know what, if I am going to fumble, if we are going to lose, I want to lose maybe the right way. I don't think he's going into this match saying he's going to lose, but I am definitely alluding to the fact that you might be a bit fed up. You might want something new. You might want a clean start. But looking at this game, this should still be a win for Canada. I think there's so much talent within this squad. Once they get on the same page and are humble and go about their business the right way, they should be winning. Again, the big spot for me is who's going to lead in the back. And Wheels, Ollie, Adam, you followed the game. There's no secret that the spine of a team or how you defend is a huge part of your success. And who will be that voice back there? I think Kamal Miller's a lock-in. But is it Waterman playing? Are you going to play with 2 left with Cornelius again? It's weird how you can play with 2 right-footed center backs, but 2 left-footed just seems so odd. But we'll see what decisions he goes with. But I think if I had to pick an answer, I like that he's been gutsy and he says, like, this is the time. Because now winning this game and going to Copa, this is just a freshness that comes to the group.
Right. And there needs to be that kind of freshness. 7 changes. The only player over 30 in this side it's actually Jonathan Osorio, and who's a little bit of a leader in his own right here. But there needs to be a way to give the star players a platform to be the best that they can be. I'm not sure if that means formation change. There needs to be competition when it comes to the national team. There was a feel over the last few years that players were getting back in the team based upon reputation, or maybe even a little bit of a lack of competition, players kind of forcing their way into the team. Now you can see, like, when a player like Chouanier, like, he had to be part of this setup. Like, he has worked and earned his way back into the team. Ike Ugbo, the team was so thin up top with genuine established number 9s last window that when they needed a goal against Jamaica, there just wasn't enough firepower. The fact that Theo Bair, a player that Mauro Biello is very familiar with from the Canada under-20 setup, and coming through the system, he's earned his way into this team, scoring in 9 of his last 10 games since really December 30th for Motherwell. He's been absolutely on fire. You need that kind of competition. Like, it wasn't just that Milan Borjan in that moment started doing keep-ups on the field. I think it symbolized something bigger than that you saw the frustration from some Canadian players. There was maybe a complacency. There was maybe this idea that we are maybe something that we're not, or maybe what we achieved can carry us forward rather than the team continuing and consistently evolving. So it's what Mauro Biello had to do. If they win and go on and do it with flying colors, he'll be praised. If it blows up in his face, if it doesn't work out, then it's something that he's the interim manager. And Kevin Blue, the new general secretary, was very clear, releasing a statement that the search for the next Canadian national team head coach is well up and running. So for Biello, what does he have to lose here? He had to make changes like this for me to really set the proper tone heading into this massive game.
Yeah, I fully agree with that, Gareth, too, because he, being Mauro Biello, still in contention for the permanent job. So if he keeps the same old, they get by. That's not showing the new brass that he's innovative or doing something different or ready to push this team forward. And if he does this and they lose, then maybe he says, well, I took a shot and at least I tried something. And with that, Ollie, it's one thing to go out and make some of these tough decisions. One of the players not on that roster, Ali Ahmed, and of course he's just coming back from injury, but that's a big call.
I'm guessing that's why. I'm guessing that's why.
I think it is too, Gareth, and maybe the Whitecaps said, and speculating here, maybe he's not quite ready, or who knows. But with that, one of the things you quickly highlighted when we had our pre-production and just sort of release or reveal of our thoughts on this when it came out was Alphonso Davies might have to play left back. He's the only left back in this team. Do you think that's the toughest lineup decision for Mauro Biello? Is there something else that might cause the coach some consternation?
Well, I don't know if that one's that tough because he's the only option. So I think he's, whether it's a back 4 or a back 3, I think Davies is going to be playing left back or left wing back in this game. And it is only one game. So, that's okay. I'm okay with that. I think the big decisions to be made as a centre back next to Kamal Miller. If it's a 3, obviously Alistair Johnston will play on the right, but it's who plays either in the middle of the 3 or on the right, in the right centre back position. If it's a back 4 that, I don't know the answer to right now. Derek Cornelius, I think, is a very good left-footed left centre back. but we've seen him in the middle of the back three against Japan, and we saw him on the right of the side of the four against Jamaica, and they conceded 7 goals in 2 games. Now Trinidad aren't either of those 2 teams, so maybe you try him again and maybe you can get away with it this time. The other options, pretty unproven. Bombito, Joel Wartzman, Luke de Fougerolles. You know, to a certain extent, if you go with one of those guys who are more naturally right-sided, you're going to be throwing someone into their biggest game for Canada that they've ever played, with a place in the Copa America on the line, and some threat, particularly, you know, you would think pace on the counter-attack with this Trinidad and Tobago team. So it's centre-back for me. I'll just touch on goalkeeper quickly. I think if you've decided Crepeau is your starter, and I think he will be, it doesn't really make sense to bring Boyan, so that one isn't a huge shock to me. But Vittoria, replacing Vittoria at centre-back, I think that's where the real risk is for Mauro Biello in leaving those guys out.
Yeah, my quick chime to this, boys, is just like, Mauro Biello, if you want to play with the 5 in the back, so you want to play with the wing backs, who do you feel is confident enough in a one game to play in the middle? Yeah, okay, you can play Kamal on the left and you can play outside, but who? Because when you play with 3 in the back, whoever's in the middle has to be so confident and lead. Basically, that's the majority of that role. It's like you're almost a sweeper. You clean up. So is that Luke Fougerolles? Like he's good, but he's young. He's never played. Like you're gonna go plop him in. Is that Waterman? I mean, he's played on the right for Canada in that back 3. So it's almost suggesting, okay, maybe go with the 4 in the back. And then you could play a Waterman and feel confident with a Bombito or even a Cornelius. But then you're asking Alphonso Davies to defend. Like there's some decisions Mauro Biello has to make, and I think everyone needs to buy into that. So what he does, do not know, but flip a coin, because it's definitely it could be detrimental.
But you know they're going to be defending in transition. Like it's like Trinidad and Tobago is going to be playing on the counterattack, and that's where you need more speed and pace. And this team, like I said, it's just a lot more athletic. It can get up and down the field. So it might be some version of a 3-4, you know, or 3-5-2 or something like that, or maybe just sticks with the 4-4-2 and press Buchanan and Davies up high. Either way, this should be a game where Canada have certainly much more established talent than Trinidad and Tobago, and they're going to need to be able to break down what's going to be a stubborn and well-organized back line. That's what they've proven here. And that's why I just look at the additions of Ugbo and Bear specifically as 2 big ones. Those 2 players, if you need to go to another option beyond Laren or David, because those substitutions were maybe made a little bit too early in the last game by Biello and his staff, you need to have requisite players that can come in and do a job in that area. The only question mark I have, if they do take a lead and it's a slim lead, how does that back line hold up if they do end up taking on some pressure at the end of the game? These are all the game models that the coaching staff will play through. So I think it's a good look. I'm happy that players like Schaffelberg have worked their way back into the team. Sirwa is a big one. You have 3 goalkeepers. I think Crepeau is going to be the guy that will probably be the first choice goalkeeper, but he hasn't won for Canada, you know, since during World Cup qualifying, and that was in the early stages. The last time he played for Canada was in the last game of World Cup qualifying after Canada had already qualified. So he's going to be coming back in. There's a real opportunity here, and for players to stake their claim. I think all these point about leadership is good, but who is in a position to step up right now? Who is the captain? Who is the player to take this team forward? Is it Eustachio? Is it Alphonso Davies? Is it Davies' time? Perhaps it is, you know, perhaps it's time for him to kind of step up into that role and kind of take ownership of what's been going on around him, because he's looked frustrated at times at some of the mistakes and the way that some of the things have played out in recent games. So this might be the time where Alphonso Davies, this is his team moving forward. We'll see a lot of big decisions to be made, but certainly a squad that's young, that's exciting, and we can't wait to see how this plays out.
And Ollie, we've obviously got your thoughts on some of the players not included, but if there was anything you wanted to add on some of the newer or lesser known names that Mauro Biello has called up.
Well, I'll echo what we all said earlier, that I think it's great that there's players who have worked their way into this squad on merit. I think the whole brotherhood thing and kind of creating a club kind of environment during World Cup qualifying for Qatar was great. You know, it really brought a group closer together, created a culture, created a togetherness, and Canada was you know, had a stronger team spirit, I think, as anyone in CONCACAF, and that was a big part of why they qualified. I do think since then things have got a little stale and a little complacent, and maybe, you know, certain players needed a little bit of a kick up the backside, or not certain players, but the group needed that kind of injection of players who have earned it and a different look. So you look at someone like Theo Bair. This guy was nowhere near like a year ago, struggling a little bit in Scotland, not scoring a lot of goals. To see him, you know, turn things around there, do a lot of work on his game set to improve in that division, score the goals he's scoring now, and get into the squads. You know, Matthew Chouanier, the rise he's had over the past year or so. Same thing with Jonathan Sirois. I think it's definitely the right time. As much as there's some risk associated with dropping the veterans, I'm totally on board with giving players who have earned this on merit, who are in form with their clubs, who have seen their club careers rise over the past 12 months or so. You know, you've got to start rewarding these guys and get them in and picking your squad that way, rather than picking on who played well 2 years ago.
Just one really, the only name based upon the squad that he picked that I'm a little bit surprised is maybe Lucas McNaughton, because he could have played that right side center back. He's playing in Champions Cup. He's playing against Messi and company. Maybe a little bit the fact that Nashville has played the continental competition, he could have slotted in as well. So maybe that would be the only player that you're kind of thinking, you know, maybe he's a little bit hard done by being left out.
Maybe guys disagree with me, and maybe I'm just used to it as well. But I thought it was just a name where I kind of read the list again. I was like, Junior Hoylett. I said, because
hasn't been playing. I'm like, hasn't been playing.
I know, but I'm just like, it's weird seeing them without a guy like this. But again, that's just a name that for me,
a lot of like, yeah. I mean, like to that point, there's a long list of players who are pretty prominent during World Cup qualifying and over the Herdman periods that just aren't there anymore. Like Boyan, Vittoria, Henry, Atiba Hutchinson, Wotherspoon, Kay, Hoylett, Cavallini. Like it's a lengthy list of veteran guys who Mauro Biello hasn't included here, or who have walked away from the national team.
That was a long time ago. Honestly, football moves quickly. So
it certainly does. And time moves quickly too, Gareth Wheeler, because we are just 11 days from your voice calling Canada and Trinidad and Tobago in a Copa America qualifying match. We cannot wait for it here on One Soccer. And before we move on, also announced today by the CSA, another friendly for our men's national team. Now, this one won't happen until September, but when it does, Canada and Mexico will be meeting for the first time since the infamous Azteca of November 2021, all in preparation for the upcoming round of Nations League and, of course, the 2026 World Cup.